ahead and have a roll call. And Rick Rudloff?
Yes.
Jim Kirshner? Yes. Jerry Diesel?
Yes.
I'm here. Terry McDaniel?
Here.
Martha, ooh, I almost said Martha Stewart.
Hey.
Martha Riesinger?
Okay, I mean, yes.
Eric Bosler?
Here.
All right. First on the agenda, we have a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Next, we have the tax rate hearing.
All right, so I guess, here we go, okay? And if you have questions as we go through this, stop me, because this is very complicated this year, okay? So here we go. There we go. Okay. For public schools, the state requires that, as you see on Chapter 165, that all money be accounted for in the framework of 4 funds. So we have the incidental fund, the teacher fund, debt service, and capital projects. Section 165.011 requires that the debt service fund be maintained in a separate bank account. And St. John R2, we comply. We have all of our debt service money in a separate bank account. The link there at the bottom is for the 2022 Missouri Public School Finance Accounting Manual. If you really want to dig in, it's a very big manual, and it'll put you to sleep at night, so it might be a good sleep aid. So looking and breaking the funds down a little bit more, the incidental fund is traditionally called Fund 1. This basically is everything that is spent, anything that we purchase, unless it's in one of the following 3 funds. So in Fund 2, our teachers fund, this is legally restricted to paying teachers' salaries, teachers' benefits, and tuition to other school districts. It says teachers, but it also includes all of our substitutes because they hold a substitute certificate with the state of Missouri. And any of our paras, our teachers' aides that hold a substitute certificate, they all are paid out of Fund 2. Debt service is traditionally called Fund 3. And this is for any of our long-term debt. So long-term debt would be when we ran a bond issue, which we have in the past. We've ran multiples, so debt service money is used to pay off those bonds. Fund 4, capital projects, facility acquisition, construction, any lease purchase, principal or interest payments, and then any capital outlay expenditures. So capital outlay would be the large roofing project we did this past summer, the track and field resurfacing. Probably sometime during this year, we're going to talk about some HVAC work that needs to be done in 3 of our 4 buildings. So those would be examples of big capital outlay projects. Okay? So what happens is I get information from the county clerk, who gets the information from the county assessor. And then I work through the calculations. I submit the calculations to the state auditor's office. They review them within 24 hours and either send back, hey, you need to take a look and fix this, or this is approved and looks good. So then I put together the tax rate hearing notice. Legally, we are required to post the tax rate hearing in 3 public places. So we choose the courthouse, city hall, and the post office. We also send it to Sun-Times News and the Herald for publication. We put it on all of our social media accounts, district website, and then we posted it in all of our buildings. So this is our tax rate history. What you see for 2021 is a little bit different than what we've traditionally done in the past, and I'll explain that more as I go through everything that we're kind of circling and waiting on hearing, and it's that we're working through. But I am recommending to the board that we put the bulk of our tax rate, our local tax money, into Fund 1. That we not put anything in Fund 2, and again, I'll explain why a little bit. That we keep our debt service at 44 cents, and that we put 5 cents into our capital projects fund. And again, I'm going to come back to all of this and bring the big picture in for you. But if you do look from 2021 to 2020, the total tax rate, we are going to reduce by 6 cents, not quite 7. So for those of us who have lived in our home and not made any improvements or put any new buildings on our properties this year, you are going to see a small, very small decrease for the taxes that you pay for the district. Debt service, the maximum calculated rate that we could set debt service at this year was about 53 cents. We are voluntarily rolling it back 9, almost 10 cents, and setting it at 44. So I pulled this off of the tax rate hearing. I'm going to break this into 2 different parts. So the first part is the top. It's the assessed valuation for the county. And if you compare the 2 years, you see that in 2020, the assessed valuation was $407 million in the county. But in 2021, it's $801 million, which is a large jump. And I wanted to specifically discuss that because I know there's a rumor out there that all of our taxes are being increased, and that is not true. That big jump, the majority of the big jump that you see is because Wholesome has been on a Chapter 100 tax abatement for 10 years. They've been paying $4.8 million, and we've received 2.9 of that. So it was in lieu of tax payment, but they haven't been paying their full taxes for 10 years. This was the year that they came on the tax books. So that is where the majority of that jump is coming from. But also, in talking to the assessor, we do have a lot of construction improvements happening in our county. But traditionally, it's around, if you look at 2020, that $3, $4, $5 million mark. So this big jump is because Wholesome is coming on the tax books. So if you break down the numbers and you look at what should come in with our tax rate, if you look at 2020, a 100% collection rate would have been $14.1 million. We never receive a 100% collection rate. It actually came in, I think I had budgeted for around 93, and it actually came in at 95%, which was $13.4 million. So if we had a 100% collection rate this year, it would be $27.2 million. Well, we know that is not going to happen, or we're pretty sure that's not going to happen. So what am I looking at, and what do I think I'm going to bring to you in the amended budget next month? So I thought I would just throw this slide in. If we did a 100% collection rate, like I said, it would be the $27.2 million. Wholesome they did file a protest with our local board of equalization. The local board sided with the assessor. Wholesome has until September 30th to decide if they want to go to the next level. So the next appeal, protest, if you will, would go to the Missouri Tax Commission. If the Missouri Tax Commission would side with our county assessor, then it would go to the court system. And once it goes there, well, even to the Missouri Tax Commission, you're talking, the process could take 2 years, it could take 5 years, it could take 6 years, we don't know. So if Wholesome does go and file the protest with the Missouri Tax Commission, 8.9 million of the 27 million the district should see will go into an escrow account. And it'll sit in escrow until the courts or whoever rules. So that is money that I think from what Mike Stewart explained to me before he passed, that we could access going through the court system. But if we access the money, we have to be prepared to pay back if the courts or the tax commission would side with Wholesome. We have to be willing or able to pay back the difference, if you will. So let's say someone sided with Wholesome and said, of that 8.9, 4 million is the school district's. Well, we would have to be prepared to pay back the 4.9 over that 4 million. That's just kind of an example. Does that make sense? Okay. So we know 8.9 million, we think 8.9 million is going to go into an escrow account. Collection fees on the taxes is typically about 3%. That's a little high, but again, we try to be, a little bit more aggressive on the expense side and a little conservative on the revenues. So our total anticipated distributable taxes is 17.4 million. So of that 17.4, I'm going to project a 94% collection rate. So 6% is uncollectible and it won't be paid. So that's about $1 million that you take out. So for budgeting purposes, I'm kind of looking at local taxes, 6.4 million, somewhere in that range, which would be, if you take out what we got last year, it would be about a $2.9 million increase in the funds coming into the school district. Okay, you with me so far?
That 13.4 million, but that doesn't include the pilot they used to pay, right?
No, that's a good point, yes. So if you add the 2.9 in there, it's pretty even. Good point, I didn't even think about that. But the other thing that we need to think about when we're trying to work through this amended budget and figure this out, is St. John R2 receives approximately 75% of the local taxes that come in. That means if the battle with Wholesome goes to the tax commission, to court, and it goes on for years, St. John pays 75% of the legal fees. So right now, working on the amended budget for the 21-22 school year, I'm going to put in about $750,000 in legal fees to support the county as they work through the process with Wholesome. But overall, we were given an estimate about 6-7 years ago. So the projection for the school district, if this goes all the way through the court system, would be somewhere in the $2 to $3 million range for the legal fees. So there are a lot of unknowns, and so I have talked to the assessor and the county clerk and Mr. Bova multiple times, and with this board prior to the tax rate hearing about rolling our tax rate back. And we have talked about it, and I think once this whole situation with Wholesome is settled, I believe this district and this board is committed to doing that, because I know I am. Roll back the taxes, give everyone a tax break. But there are a lot of unknowns this year, and I can't predict, and Linda's here, our assessor. Linda can't predict what's going to happen in the next 6 months, month really, in the next 6 months, in the next year. So it's a waiting game right now to see what Wholesome decides to do next. So I sought advice from former superintendents who are really good in school finance, our school finance person at DESE, current superintendents who are really good with finance, and they're all kind of where we are at right now. With the unknown, you have to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. And so I feel like that's what I'm trying to tell you with all of this, is I feel like I have to present it this way and prepare for the worst, but hope for the best, because I really want that best for everyone. So legal fees. The other thing, that we're looking at and we've been working on for about 2 years, and we're going to come in October and present the board with a long-range facility plan. This is kind of a preview. This is the rough sketch. We still have to put everything in writing and then take it back to the district level committee for final approval, and then it'll come to the board in written form, and we'll talk about it way more in depth. But these are some of the facility plans that are coming out and rising to the top. These are the top 8, matter of fact. The number 1 priority from all the committee work is an early childhood center, with the possibility of maybe moving all of our kindergarten classes into that center, which would free up classroom space at St. John Elementary and Bloomsdale Elementary, where we need classroom space desperately. So Where does it go? What land does it sit on? What does it look like? We don't have any answers to that yet, but this is the number one priority from the committee work. Number two is St. John Elementary. If you have ever gone in their building, you know the front of their building is not ADA compliant. If someone is in a wheelchair or needs additional assistance, we actually have to send them in the side of the building and they have to call the building. So working on the front of that building to make it more ADA compliant. New office space, possibly in that ADA compliant area. Gym expansion. Right now, the elementary cannot use their gym for an assembly because they cannot put all of their students in that gym. So gym expansion and/or taking that gym down, because I don't know if a lot of people know it, there is a lot of space under that gym that we can't use because of mold, mildew, there's not proper ventilation, and with allergies and asthma, we can't put kids in those spaces. Plus the old, what was it, a boiler or coal, the old furnace? They used to put the coal in the window. There's a giant room underneath that gym where that was at. So there's a lot of unused space under that building. HVAC upgrades. Middle school, kind of the same problem with ADA. Our kids with disabilities cannot get from the main floor of the building all the way up to the top of the middle school. There is no elevator, there is no way for them to access that top floor. So putting an elevator in that would hit all 3 levels in that building, we would have to go in through the counseling offices, so maybe some counseling offices around that elevator. Putting a bathroom on the 3rd floor, there is not a bathroom on the 3rd floor currently, and the middle school desperately needs some HVAC work too. I think they are the biggest project on this list in regards to the HVAC. Bloomsdale Elementary, when you come in Bloomsdale, there's only one locked door, and for safety purposes now, schools should have what they call a double gated entry, which is what you see here. They come in, they buzz in, and then the office determines whether they actually come in the full building or not. So a double gated entry, they need a heat pump, and we're keeping an eye on, right? We put Lagoon on here because it could need some work. Right now it seems that we're gonna be okay, but it may need to be addressed in the future. High school, addition of a practice gym, new weight room, wrestling room expansion. Athletic facilities, if you've been at Yanks and Leon's, you see that we need lights and fences, and our bleachers are really old, especially on Yanks South. Lights over the pole vault area. When they pole vault at a meet and it gets dark, sometimes it's really dark and those kids are jumping pretty high. And then if you've ever used the men's restroom at the track and field, it's pretty awful, so it needs to be upgraded. High school is number 7 again. Upgrade all the restroom facilities throughout this building. They are very dated. We could put some faucets that can conserve water and toilets that kind of do some of that too. And then number 8 is our door lock system. Our door lock system throughout the entire district is really on its last leg because we can't hardly find parts to fix it. And when we do find a part, it takes us 2 or 3 months to get it here. So these are some of the areas of improvement. The other items on this list didn't make it to the top 8, but additional classroom space, and that's there, but it's not actually physically written out. The plumbing at the middle school really needs to all come out in the original part of the building and be redone. Playground upgrades. One of the committee members from Bloomsdale suggested that we install a 200-meter track out of Bloomsdale Elementary. The first time those kids get to experience track is when they actually come to middle school here. Otherwise, they don't have access to any type of area like that. So those are just some additional things that I think will probably end up on the long-range plan. So I'm bringing this back up because hopefully maybe you kind of got the connection. But I do need to talk about Fund 2. One thing that you need to know about Fund 2 is when a public school ends the school year, you have to have a zero balance in Fund 2. It's a law, it's required by law. So if I would have put that $1.18 in Fund 2 like we traditionally do, we would have ended the year with a fund balance in Fund 2, and it, you know, I think the first time it's probably a slap on the wrist, but it doesn't look good for a school district to do that. So what I did find out through my research is that we are one of very few school districts throughout the state who even put any tax money in Fund 2. Most school districts put it all in Fund 1, like you see here. And then what they do every month is they do a transfer from Fund 1 to Fund 2 to cover the expenses. That is one of the allowable transfers that you can do between funds. And so that is the practice that I am proposing that we try because of everything that we're dealing with this year. I don't think it'll be a big deal because, like I said, the majority of the school districts in the state of Missouri do that. And then I just went through all of those capital projects in that long-range facility plan. That's why I thought it might be a good idea for this year for us to put 5 cents. It should generate somewhere between $200,000 and $400,000 in Fund 4 to do some of the more minor projects. So now it's time for questions from the board. So we'll start with the board first. And I know you've all had my paperwork for a little while to kind of go through and digest. You explained it. Thanks. Especially this year.
So the debt service of 44 cents is a voluntary 9-cent rollback from what it could be.
Correct.
And the operating levy is about 6.5 cents less than it was last year.
Correct.
So it's lower than last year, and could be lower in the future.
Could be.
Once Wholesome, I mean, it could be, here I go, it could be 10 cents lower, it could be 20 cents lower, if Wholesome comes on the books at the value that the county thinks they're worth.
The lowest you could set the operating levy at is 2.75. That's the floor. You can't set it below that.
So put the debt service and capital projects on top of that, it could,
The debt service goes on top of that. The operating levy is Fund 1, Fund 2, and Fund 4 together.
okay. Just
Debt service is the only additional thing you can add to it.
Okay. And Dr. Fleega said this multiple times, but I just want to reiterate it, because we talk about Wholesome a lot. The folks that work at Wholesome, the local Wholesome group that has put in multiple items here, we greatly appreciate that and appreciate all that they do for our community. We just have we, the county, the school district being part of that, have a stark difference of opinion of what they're worth. So,
Yes, they've been wonderful neighbors and done wonderful projects and contributed great things to this district, but there is a big difference in the value that they say and the value that the assessor in the county says. Well, we have already, over the past several years, paid some of those legal fees already. I do know in June we got a bill for some of the legal work that the county's doing, and so it was about $55,000. So it kind of depends, I guess, however much work they need to do or gets accomplished. So I guess once it gets rolling, it could be monthly. It just kind of depends.
and if this continues, they go to the state tax commission. If they don't like the result, they go to the circuit court system. We could end up paying 75% of 2, 3, million. And that money continues to sit in escrow unless we want to try and get it, but then we'd have to pay it back if it does not decide it. Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Okay.
And Dr. Fleegan, until it is all settled, do they continue to pay taxes at the rate they were? I mean, they were being excused, so to speak, but, so what rate do they pay taxes at until it's settled?
Whatever we said.
Well, I think, and maybe you can correct
They will pay taxes based on the value that the Board of Equalization approved,
Okay,
which was my,
but then they can contest that, so then the money just isn't holding.
right, and I figured the taxes based on the county's value to be close to $18 million.
Okay,
That nobody will voluntarily go over with that. Using their proposed value of $405 million, and we're at almost 1.2 billion, the taxes would be about $6 million. So that's where there's probably about $11.8 million that would sit in escrow.
Linda, could I ask you a couple questions? So the county says Wholesome is worth such and such. Wholesome says they're worth, let's go this way, such and such. Do they have to stick with one of those values when they go to the state tax commission?
No, no, because once it goes forward, we will write an appraisal. My appraiser will have to write a municipal appraisal based on sales approach, cost approach, income approach. He could come up with a totally different number, which I expect could even be higher than what we've used.
So there's a little bit of ambiguity there also. And my other question is, let's say it's a perfect world and they come onto the tax books, or it's solved in a year. They can do this again next year, is that correct? Or is it just a reassessment year, or is it any year?
Every odd year is a reassessment year, and they can appeal every odd year. New construction is on an even years, and they could appeal that as well.
Thank you.
Even though we get the bulk of the tax money, there's other public entities in the county, such as, I want to make it sound like we're the only one. There's other
No.
people, other, sheriff's department, the hospital,
county health. Yeah, there's quite a few.
so it's not just us.
No.
And back to the list of the facilities meeting, you want to give a little background on how that list came about?
Sure.
How long it's been going on? It didn't just overnight happen.
Yeah, it seems like it's been going on forever because, COVID messed everything up. But we began the work. We had the large meeting in January of 2020. I'm going to look at Bailey a few times. 2020, the subcommittees, mainly the buildings, the athletics, the early childhood groups, were meeting and working through and doing facility tours. Most of them had a pretty good idea of what their list was going to be, and then March of 2020 hit, and so all work stopped at that point. When we got back in school in the fall of 2020, they picked up that work again. Some of it was email communication, whatever they needed to do. So then they presented the subcommittees presented their list to me, and then we got together the district level committee. And the first district level committee meeting was in January of 2021, and we met monthly, and our last meeting was at the beginning of this month, right? The beginning of this month, where we kind of went through those top 8 and then looked at the rest of it. That's kind of the first time we talked about transitioning kindergarten into the early childhood center. So it's been a process. There have been a lot of parents, patrons, employees. It's been quite a process. But I am really excited to see that final written plan and how it all flows out.
A lot of thought goes
Yes. So I guess at this point, do we want to turn it over to the audience?
Sure. Any questions from the audience on the tax rate hearing?
I just have one question. Julie and I have talked that when the local funding is up, that affects your state and federal funding, is that correct?
Yes. Now, what impact that's going to have, I'm not quite sure yet. Because it will depend when, that big number, the 27 million we were looking at, when and if that actually comes.
So that could only make the other funding go down, which, naturally as a county assessor, I always want the tax rates to go way back.
Yes.
But I'm trying to understand, and I want to help taxpayers when they call in, when they get their tax bills. I want to be able to explain that, that your state and federal funding are affected
Yes,
when it goes down.
that is correct.
I guess I just want to reiterate that one slide that you showed us. Once they pay their taxes, take out the escrow, we pay our fees for collecting the taxes. And then you factor in the fact that not everyone pays their taxes.
No.
That leaves 16.424 million, and that 13.471 million doesn't include I'm just going to say a $3 million payment from Wholesome.
Correct.
So the difference is, I don't want to say minimal, but it's not
Not as big as it
it's
appears.
not a super large number.
Yes.
And we're facing $750,000 in legal fees.
And I apologize. I don't know why. That 2.9
You don't have to
didn't
apologize,
even-
it's a lot.
Yeah, 2.9 just kind of went, phew. So,
I don't see a motion. I mean, when the time
no,
comes.
you do a
No, that's
motion
what- that's in right here.
during the board meeting. This is just a hearing.
See, it's a lot.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Room and do that.
Does anyone else have any questions?
All right. If there's no other questions, Linda, thank you for coming and answering some questions for us.
Anytime.
Sure, thanks.
And I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn the tax rate hearings at 7:35.
Second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn the tax rate hearing. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Next, kick off our regular meeting and begin, let's see, at 7:33 with the Pledge of Allegiance.
The other one was 7:35, this was 7:33.
Right. Something like that.
Wish my
I
life
pledge
would be like
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll go with 7:35. Somebody's clock's wrong. All right. We'll do the roll call again. David Bova here. Eric Bosler. Here. Geraldine Diesel. Here. James Kirschner. Here. Martha Riesinger. Here. Richard Rudolph. Here. Terrence McDaniel. Here. All right. Everybody present. Our board norms are available. I read them last meeting, so I won't put us through that this meeting. Next, we have approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have the approval of the consent agenda.
Before you approve the consent agenda, I do have paper copy. It lists all the card holders for number H, our purchasing agreement. It lists and identifies all of the card holders, all of the employees that have school credit cards. It identifies their limit, and then attached to that list is a signed agreement from every one of those people. I started to put it in board docs, but it seemed wrong to put credit card information with signatures in a public document. So I thought I would bring the paper copy and let you all just pass it around. If you had any questions, you could ask me.
Yes.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda item as presented.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have public participation. Board members and administrators will listen to concerns and will respond when appropriate by mail or telephone at a later date. The public comment period will not exceed 15 minutes. No individual will be permitted to speak more than once during this period, and each speaker will be allotted no more than 5 minutes. Per policy BDDH-1, public participation at board meetings. The following guidelines and procedures will be followed. In order to speak during public participation, a public comment form must be filled out and submitted to the board president prior to the beginning of the meeting. Public comment period will not exceed 15 minutes. No individual will be permitted to speak more than once, and each speaker will be allotted no more than 5 minutes. I haven't received any cards.
I have not either.
I have not received any emails either, though. Now that we're present here, it would just be the cards. I did want to, if you don't mind me taking a few minutes, say I had some board members come to me and some members of the public questioning board members wearing face coverings. So I want to point something out. The board wore face coverings all of last year up until May of this year, and can still do so.
Well, I brought it because I thought we had to.
Yes, absolutely. We abided by our own reopening plan the entire time. Secondly, we are more than 6 foot apart. If we're ill, we don't show up, so we are also continuing to following our reopening plan. And third, though visitors are currently required to wear face coverings in certain situations, they're not required if it's not during school hours and an event isn't held in a classroom. So we are not in a classroom and we're not here during school hours. So I just wanted to point those things out because I think we all up here like to follow the rules, but right now we're free to be unmasked.
And I have been asked about, why are you making visitors during the day? And it's because we're operating on the idea of this is our cohort, these are our classes, these are our kids. They're around each other, and a visitor is an unknown. Do we know where the kids go every night and what they do? No. But, you got to have some faith and trust in the people in your cohort. So.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Mhm.
Next, we have a report of the superintendent.
Okay. In your board packet, you do have one very nice note of appreciation from Bethany Beckett's family. So if you haven't seen that, make sure you read that. My next item is actually Dr. Taylor's. He's going to talk about the PD days that we had last week.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
We began our back-to-school professional development on Monday, August 16th. I know some of you were able to attend our keynote speaker. I thought he was fantastic. I've received some good feedback. Just a good positive way to get the year started. We did various activities the remainder of the day. There's required trainings and all kinds of requirements that we have to have staff and faculty do throughout the day. But it kicked off with a wonderful keynote. On Tuesday, August 17th, we did some ALICE training. We had some first aid training, required videos for staff. We provided some time for our teachers to work in their classroom. Teachers had ALICE training as well. We had a teacher work day on Wednesday, August 18th. And then on Thursday, August 19th, we had collaboration time for grade level and subject level teams. One thing we did change this year is normally our building level faculty meetings are on the third day. We put it right after the keynote address. And I haven't talked to the building principals. Did that work out okay for everyone? Just to get everybody energized and positive from the keynote, and then go into the building level meetings with a positive attitude and ready to kick off the school year. So we will put out a survey. Several years ago, I switched it. Instead of putting out a survey for our back-to-school kickoff and then another one after our September 3rd PD Day, I wait till after that September 3rd PD Day, and I do one survey just to gather input from everybody. What did you think of it? What could be improved upon? What do we need for next year? And I always beg, we've got tremendous professionals in our buildings with tremendous skill, and I always beg them to share their skills, and they're always hesitant, but every once in a while we identify one, and we're able to provide a PD session from one of our own in-house. So I thought it was a good PD day. We'll know more after our September 3rd PD day when we get the survey back and we're able to get it to the Professional Development Committee and evaluate that survey.
Of course, we haven't had time to do safety reports yet, or safety drills. I went ahead this month and this year I moved the first day numbers to September. It's always a struggle, and I always feel really bad badgering the secretaries in all 4 buildings to get numbers for the August board meeting, because this year they were really busy enrolling kids. But I do have some preliminary numbers, and I think you're going to be pretty excited next month, because I think our enrollment is up pretty significantly compared to last year. And I think there's only one class that I'm seeing right now that didn't grow and has more kids. So I'll bring those more solid numbers to you in September and share that information. And of course, I'll have the preschool information too. So, but I'm pretty excited about what I'm seeing so far. And that is the end of my report.
Thank you. Looks like we have no unfinished business. So we'll go to new business, which is setting the tax rate.
Yes. And so I'm just going to throw up the information that I presented, where I'm recommending that you set it and roll it back 6%. Questions? All right.
I'll motion to set the operating levy at $2.9517 and the debt service level at 44 cents for a total levy of $3.3971 for the 2021-22 school year.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have the summer of 2022 MISHA dead period.
Yes, you have a letter of recommendation in your in board docs from Dr. Nix. It doesn't look like much is going to change next year. MISHA requires for your summer dead period that you have 9 consecutive days in length where you allow your kids to take a break. They don't have practices. They don't have any contact with their coaches. The dead period must begin on a Saturday and last through the second following Sunday. We have typically, all except for 1 year, set our dead period the 9 days before the first allowable fall practice. So for next school year, the fall practice, the first day that you can practice is Monday, August 8th. So we are recommending that we set the summer of 2022 MISHA dead period for activities for July 30th through August 7th. And that would meet MISHA's requirements.
I like that we set it so early so people can plan their
Yes.
summer.
Yes. We used to do this when we made our school calendar in February.
Yeah.
And it wasn't enough time, especially if families were going to book flights and make reservations. It was pretty hard.
Any other questions? Or you got it?
I'll move to approve the July 30, 2022 through August 7, 2022 for the summer of 2022 Michigan Asbury for activity.
Second.
A motion and a second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have adjourned to closed session. Mr. McDaniel.
Under revised Missouri Statute 610.021, I motion that the Board of Education adjourn to a closed meeting for the closed record and closed vote after a short break for the purpose of discussing and voting upon the following items of business: hiring, firing, disciplining, and promoting of particular employees, and scholastic probation, exposure, or graduation of identifiable individuals. There'll be a roll call vote there. Motion by me. I need a second.
Second.
And a second. David Bova,
Yes.
Gary Bowser,
Yes.
Gerald Diesel,
Yes.
Jim Kirchner, Martha Reesinger, Richard Rudolph,
Yes.
Aaron McDaniel, yes. Motion carried.